Hey everyone. Keep it going for yourselves tonight for coming out tonight. All it takes is caffeine, free pizza, and a talk. And it's better than being in your dorm room. So just want to say, I used to do stand-up comedy back in the day. And if you've noticed, if you've been to the Improv or a comedy club, that they always say, keep it going for your last comedian. So keep it going for the heads of the AMA. Give it up for them. Working hard for the people, and those people are you. My name is Ryan Williams, and I wrote a book called The Influencer Economy, How to Launch Your Idea, Share it with the World, and Thrive in the Digital Age. Who here has read my book? And seen. Wow, what a really well-researched crowd. So I could tell you anything right now, and no one would know. So I published my book, and I'll get into my backstory during the talk. But overall, if you looked at influence online, right, when you're on YouTube, social media, Snapchat, Instagram, and I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and there's a lot of barns there, a lot of silos. And when you want to grow your influence, you need to collaborate. You need to constantly collaborate with other people, tag them on your posts, tag businesses if you're working with them like AMA does. And also think about, you can't just be alone. So many of us have these big aspirations of launching Silicon Valley companies. You read the headlines of these major acquisitions or companies like Uber and Lyft going public. But over time, you realize that you can't just have your idea sitting in your dorm room. Or all these fantasies of Stanford graduates like Sergey Brin and Google, where they built this company in their garage. At the end of the day, you have to collaborate and work with as many people as possible, which I understand everyone here is very good at collaborating, because who here is on Instagram? Who here is on Facebook? Who here does not like Facebook? Okay, more people don't like Facebook than are on Facebook. That's a good focus group. Who here is on Bumble? Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. Wow. Wow, hello. So getting back to the influencer economy. So today, I want to talk to you about storytelling. Because all of us are trying to network here. We're trying to build our careers out. We're also trying to market our business ideas. And so today, I'm going to help you find story clarity, because story is really the genesis of everything. I wrote this book about influence, and at the end of the day, influence, we're so noisy right now. Everything online distracts us. People right now, I saw someone FaceTiming in the back. We're always on call. And so at the end of the day, you have to put distractions to the side. And so story clarity is so important. And I'm going to go through the habits of world-class storytellers. I've interviewed Oscar-nominated screenwriters, some of the biggest venture capitalists in the country, different talent managers in Los Angeles. And I'm going to help you understand their habits that are well-researched. We're also going to talk about your business brand story and help you tell your authentic story. At the very end, we're going to have actions and lessons, because I want to help you have takeaways. How many of you have been to a talk here, and you're like, that was wonderful, I learned so much, I can't remember a damn thing what they said, right? That's everyone that's on Bumble, just raise their hand. So anyway, remember that, ladies. So I've been deconstructing happiness. I'm very fascinated by what makes us happy, what makes us have purpose, what makes us have clarity with our stories. And there's 4 ways to define happiness through numerous research studies at a lot of different academic universities. There's a sense of belonging helps you become happy. And that's a relationship where you're valued, and not just having a relationship with a male or a female partner, but actually feeling like you're part of a friend group, an AMA culture and society. There's also purpose, right? So that's using strength to service others. Like service leadership, right? Where the end game is to help others, and that's how you reach your goals together. The second is transcendence, and that's helping yourself reach a higher community. Oftentimes that's religion. That's your favorite band that you go to that has a community around it. And that's something that gives you more clarity in the long run. And then finally, your story. And storytelling is interesting, right? I wrote up here that it's the story you tell yourself about yourself to others, which is interesting, right? Because most of our stories come down to editing. Like if you have a negative experience and you lead with that, that is perceived as weakness. But so many times, all of us are talking, that weakness can become a strength. And so today, through the storytelling, by the end of this, I want to help you get a better job. I want to help you write a better cover letter. And I want to help you launch your business brand on Facebook, or not Facebook, on Instagram. Anyone here use, did I say Snapchat earlier? That's not as big anymore, right? It is? Oh, it is? All right. You guys want to give the talk? So I'm a former stand-up comedian, as I mentioned. I performed at the Improv. That was my peak. And I used to have a comedy production talent management company. And when you put yourself out there as a comedian, it's all about one foot in front of the other. And I love you all. I've had so many worse crowds than this one. I've had people heckle me, call me the worst names in the book. Do you remember a time you could smoke at bars? You may not remember that. I had someone flick a cigarette at me once in Baltimore, Maryland in a dive bar. I was actually clinically depressed when I was performing stand-up comedy. I will let you be the judge if I was funny or not, because a clinically depressed stand-up comedian, it's hard to imagine there's humor, but at the end of the day, a lot of suffering. Anyone here follow Buddhism? Buddhism is often about how suffering is the one thing we have in common. And oftentimes in comedy, that's where you relate to people. And so, fast forward to my career, I'm now living in Los Angeles and I'm happily married, and I still battle with depression, right? At the end of the day, it's something, my mood is lower on par than the average person. And so ultimately, comedy helped me put my foot out one in front of the other, and I call it my jumping out of an airplane moment, where I was able to put myself out there and feel my feelings in a way that I realized I didn't want to do stand-up comedy ever again. And then I went to a company called Machinima.com. Anyone here know of the game Minecraft? It's a very popular game. Anyone here playing it right now? That's not always the case. I give corporate talks at companies, and I say, who here uses Facebook? And everyone raises their hand. And then I say, who is on Facebook now? Like a quarter of the room is on Facebook at that moment. So don't get me wrong, it's the age of distraction. And at Machinima, we pioneered the game launches of Minecraft, we helped with Call of Duty, and we built a community on influencers that weren't celebrities. They were micro-level influencers. There are actually people in this room right now, right? But we had scale. We had people that had 100,000 YouTube subscribers, and we found that if we put video games in the hands, anyone here watch the gameplay video on YouTube, right? Like who here's watched a Minecraft video? I mean, there's something absurd like 10% of all YouTube videos are Minecraft. At the end of the day, it's its own social network. So we helped launch Minecraft. It was acquired by Microsoft for $2.5 billion. And you can guess how much money of that I saw, because I wouldn't be on this stage right now. Because the guy that started Minecraft, he made so much money. Do you know the guy Notch who developed the game? He was from Sweden, and we had him come to our office in West Hollywood, and he live streamed the game with us. And then our influencers, these micro-level people, the collaborator core, they helped us make gameplay content around it. We crashed Minecraft.com, we launched the alpha, we launched the beta, and now this guy is bidding on houses in the Hollywood Hills against Jay-Z and Beyonce. He just bought a house with a life-size gumball machine. So you can understand how well he did. And ultimately, at Machinima, we got acquired by Warner Brothers, right? And I'm not here to tell you that money is the end game here. And I never talk about money specifically in my books, because I feel like at the end of the day, you have to find out what really makes you work. Like there's something, the North Star that people talk about. It's very consultancy. Anyone here who worked as a consultant, as an intern, you create these metaphors, right? But your North Star really does matter. And it matters that you can find the alignment of where you're going in the long run. And at Machinima, we're a hungry company. We're young. I originally worked in sales. And I came from a social media background at Disney. The first company where I worked, we were acquired by Disney at the startup. And I ended up bringing that knowledge, but I had to pay my dues again. I joined the sales team. It was so frustrating. I called my dad, my mom, and I was like overqualified for the job, right? Who here is overqualified for what they're doing for their internship? Everyone, right? You feel like you're the best, but there's a dues paying process. And so through this talk tonight, I want you to stop paying your dues. I am so frustrated by the old rules of people saying you have to do it this way because I did it. That is bullshit. Do you mind if I swear? No, go for it. See, I told you, right? You have to ask for permission first. At the end, I say the word badass sometimes, and people corporate crowds love that word. But the old way of doing things is paying your dues just for the sake of paying dues. At Disney, at startups, everywhere I've gone, there's been such infrastructure that you had to deliver, and I believe you need to deliver in the end, but if you find out where you're going in the long run, you figure out shortcuts to get there. And ultimately, influencer do not equal followers. You think about Kim Kardashian and Ryan Seacrest. I've studied their interactions on social media, and they get less likes per post than most of the bigger YouTubers, Instagrammers, and more social media-driven people. Now, that makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because they're famous, right? They're global icons. But that doesn't mean they move the needle online. And when I wrote the book, influencers were game changers. I'm a little pissed off right now. Do you mind if I keep swearing a little bit? Because Ultimately, the word influencer has been stolen by a bunch of no talent zeros, right? A bunch of people that look sexy on Instagram. Influence is making a dent in the world. You can be sexy on Instagram and make a dent in the world, but think about it. If someone here, like Johnny, looks good in blue jeans, right? And he's on Instagram, and a brand pays him to be an ambassador. But let's say his audience is all 20-year-old women because he looks sexy in those blue jeans. Yeah, we all agree. So is that a good brand fit? Do you guys think that's a good brand fit? If I'm going to sell blue jeans, let's say I wear 7 jeans, right? Do you think it's a good brand fit? Knowing Johnny over here, if his 20-something Instagram followers are just looking at him because he's a model, hypothetically, then is Johnny going to move the needle? Like, that's a question you always have to ask yourself. Is it the right fit? So influence is not defined by vanity metrics. Bullshit metrics like what? Followers don't count, likes don't count, and overall impressions, right? That's what advertisers sell you. They don't count. Because when you think about influence, followers you can buy. I can find a bunch of Ukrainian bots right now to like every single tweet I send tomorrow. And that's fake. That's fraudulent. And at the end of the day, I love getting into the data. And when anyone here thinks about their own social media, consider like what your interactions are, what's meaningful. Like, who here runs an Instagram for a business? Or has? Wants to? People. Come on, people. I love how everyone's sitting over here, by the way. Like, you guys want to sneak out and get pizza? You totally cool. Like, you're not going to, this guy is stuck, unfortunately. But he's got an empty plate and a Diet Coke, so I think all is well. And a really cool stylist. So at the end of the day, like, collaboration's key, and influence is really when you can make a dent in the world, right? Like, I'm assuming Google will be here in 20 years. And if I Google something about you and a topic, that's making a dent in the world if it shows up in 20 years. Unfortunately, we are so hard-pressed to live in a world that our validation is through social media. I did stand-up comedy, as I mentioned, and I wanted likes, right? I wanted laughs. We're all, in a way, performance artists. It's exhausting, right? Who here gets fatigued by the constant interactions we're having? And so at the end of the day, you really have to think about how you can collaborate with other people, how you can actually shoulder the load of your own building of a brand or a company or idea with other people. And so I studied Kim Kardashian's Twitter and Instagram, and I found out that she converts worse than a banner ad. And you guys are all marketing professionals, so you get it, right? No one clicks on banner ads. It's an outdated business model. And so for 83,000 clicks, yeah, she has 18 million followers. That's a 0.46 conversion. This is a link that she shared for Keeping Up with the Kardashians, right? I'm not going to ask who's watched that show, because everyone's hand probably will go up, right? Who's watched the show? I've never watched it. I'm not judging. But if you notice, the first 2 days, there's a huge, huge impact, right? Like, no joke, she drives the majority of reviews the first 2 days, but it churns. It's not evergreen. Evergreen is what lasts for a long time, right? It's something that I could listen to in 5 years. I have a podcast, 110 episodes, and am I talking too much about myself? Just want to make sure, because you guys get a lot of people up here that are, like, what I hate about talks, let me just take a little moment here for a rant, is when no one tells you how much things suck, right? People come up here, I saw a venture capitalist speak in Los Angeles. He talked about how great everything was and how he created opportunities for himself. And he sounded like the most privileged clown I've ever heard. But I had to feign interest in it because my friend was putting on the event. And so ultimately, when you think about banner ads, you think about the real deal, you can't advertise and think celebrities will change and turbocharge your idea. Everyone in LA wants some sort of celebrity to endorse their product, and it's BS. So Seth Godin, anyone here read his books? I interviewed Seth on my podcast, and he talks about how tribes, right? Tribes are something we've had for decades and centuries in the United States and the world around a group of people. And he says the 2 elements you need for a tribe are a shared interest and a way to communicate. And I want to add for Seth Godin that the third way is to collaborate. You need to work together to solve problems, to elevate one another, and to work to a common goal. And the AMA is a great example. You all collaborated on this event. You guys made a hard sell over the phone. We met through a networking conference. At the end of the day, like, you can't just rely on yourself. And so that collaboration element really is key, and it's only been personified by companies like Wikipedia, right, where you work together to solve a common problem, finding ways to make topics interesting online. And then I talk about all the money ballers. Like, who here has seen the movie? Read the book? Great book if you like baseball statistics and understanding how new methodology can help build teams. And I like this slide mostly because Brad Pitt's very handsome, and so at least keeps your eyeballs on the screen. But this book's all about thinking about new statistics. So when I think about social media, I don't care about followers, but I want you to think about, like, what are the likes per post? What are the comments per post? How many multiple comments are you getting in a thread if you respond to someone, right? There's more to it than just looking at these vanity metrics. So think about undervalued people, right? Don't talk to the 1%ers, especially right away. If you want to pitch yourself, like, if I want to work at Disney again, I'm not going to email Bob Iger, the CEO, right? You work your way up the food chain. And I mean that not derogatorily. I mean that in the sense that you have to work your way up. Collaborate with the basic people before you pitch major influencers, and that's a much more methodical process and strategic way to actually collaborate with people that are, the boxing metaphor is punching outside your weight class. So these are some of the traits of world-class storytellers. So I interviewed Billy Ray. He's a screenwriter. He wrote Hunger Games, got nominated for an Oscar. And side note, so I worked for Billy Ray when I lived in Washington, D.C. in the film industry. I was his director on the movie called Breach. It's about Russian spies, great movie, Ryan Felipe, Chris Cooper. And I worked for him for 2 weeks. And so when I came to LA, I worked in film, and I knocked on his door, and I called him up, and we went to lunch. I hadn't seen him for 10 years. I met LAX at the baggage terminal with my wife. We have young kids, and we finally got away for a weekend trip. I'm at baggage, and I see Billy Ray, and he remembered my name. He's like, "Oh, you must be Ryan. You were in D.C." So what did I do? I asked him to go to lunch, and I asked him for advice. There's an old adage that if you ask for advice, you get money. If you ask for money, you get advice. So we go to lunch, and we're at this, like, Beverly Hills tennis club. I'm living the life, right? And then I asked him to come on my podcast. And then he collaborated with me. What does Billy Ray help me with? Social proof. I interviewed an Oscar-nominated screenwriter. And all that was because I ran into him at the airport. And he actually remembered my name, but I was able to collaborate with him, right? A lot of people ask me for advice, and they want to pick my brain. That's awful. That's gross. Don't pick my brain. Like, ask me to collaborate, right? People want to go to coffee all the time, right? But coffee's for losers. Collaboration's for winners. Because you want to actually think about how you can work together. Like, hey, take a look at my Instagram. Can you give me some advice? Do you have a project idea that you can share with someone, right? Hey, take a look at my new idea, or can you look at my resume? So ultimately, when he thinks about how to pitch a story, it's how to get in the other person's shoes, how to have empathy for them. So think about the other person's loafers. And so in Hollywood, you pitch people across the table, and they're not the final gatekeeper, or they're not the final decision maker, they're the gatekeeper. So he talks about how you have to show a business ROI, you have to be the best storyteller in the room, you need to arm them with enough information. Through word of mouth, they can go to the executive suits to pitch on your behalf. So that's how messages spread, having empathy for the other person. And when I talk about authenticity, that's a very buzzed about word. What are some definitions of, what do you think authentic means? Anyone shout. Genuine? What? Conviction? Real, not fake. Legit. So my definition I've cultivated is a combination of all that. It's when your actions match your words. What you say is what you do. So you think about politics, right? What's the one reason we can't stay in politics? Fake. People make promises that they can't keep. They lie, sometimes just get elected. Sometimes they abuse their power when they get there. They don't do what they promised. Corporate CEOs, what do? They lie, right? So many people make promises to shareholders. At the end of the day, you have to figure out how to be authentic to yourself and read the room. And then I interviewed another great guy. He's a USC professor named Trey Calloway. He's written on CSI Miami, a lot of big shows. And he talks about everyone needs a cereal box pitch in film. And the cereal box is, you got the publisher, right, the film studio. You got the name, which is Frosted Flakes. You got the logo, the main character. You got the tagline, they're great. Little known fact, Frosted Flakes, Tony the Tiger is at eye level for kids. That is evil, right? Because that's why kids want the sugary cereal. Giant size, what are the ingredients? So when you pitch yourself or your business or an idea, think about all that. Think about what cohesively you can fit on a cereal box. Because you're not going to have time to spend more than 20 minutes with a lot of people. And it's interesting because we all need pitches. And nothing worse than an elevator pitch, right? Where you feel like you only have a minute to tell someone everything you're doing. Because ultimately, you want to give people a chance to have a conversation around your pitch. I'm pitching all day, and I lead with certain stories because I want to have it resonate. That doesn't mean I'm being fake, right? I call it being authentically rehearsed. Because if you're living in the moment, you can be authentic, even if the story is the same again and again and again. Some of the best storytellers stick to one story. Like, who is it? Trey Songz came here recently, right? Did anyone go see that show? You did not go. But I imagine, like, that was a few years ago. I got 2 years ago. I got some bad intelligence. That was like last week. So you want to have, like, you go see the Rolling Stones. Anyone here heard of them? You want to hear Satisfaction. Jay-Z, you want to hear Hard Knock Life. I saw Jay-Z at South by Southwest like 6 years ago. American Express did a deal with Foursquare, where if you checked in at South by Southwest, you get a free ticket to see Jay-Z at Austin City Limits. And so I saw him. He played every single hit. He wasn't saying, hey, listen to my new slow jam. He was saying, I want to give you the best. And that's what you do with your stories and your pitches. Once you rehearse, hone them, get feedback, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later for how we can develop those stories for you. And then think like a podcaster. I have over 100 episodes that I've posted. You can find them on my website, influencereconomy.com. It's also on iTunes if you search for Rhino, R-Y-N-O, Reaching Your Next Potential. But I have a great BS meter because I can tell people that oversell the opening of a story and underdeliver at the end. They try to sell you on this big idea and they don't follow through. And so when you think about, I interviewed Celeste Headley, who has a great TED Talk about how to have better conversations. There's 3 ways to connect with people: verbally, through physical body interactions, and through tone of voice. So your vocabulary is verbal, your physicality, that's really body language, and then what you're thinking about with your tone of voice. That's how you come across. So you think about it, texting is incredibly efficient. Sometimes it's better just pick up the phone and be like, what is going on here, right? Stop getting mad at me over a text. The fact that we use emoticons and emojis to not be confused over text messages shows you something, right? How many times do you put a smiley face in an email to not offend the person because you could be perceived as making fun of them? And so small talk also makes us happy. There's studies that show talking to your neighbors matters. And when you think about the rule of 3, we came, we saw, we conquered. Every great storyteller leverages the rule of 3. So let's talk about what I had for dinner tonight. I had pizza. What else did I have? Like, name of Diet Coke, and I downloaded the Bumble app. I don't know, right? But like, if I think about it sequentially, tonight I hung out and I ate pizza, I drank soda, and I downloaded Bumble. Here I am, right? There's a conclusion there. Beginning, middle, end. Every single story, I relate this to Hollywood because I think we can learn a lot about their storytelling. There's a first act, second act, third act in every movie. So we're talking about telling your brand story, right? A lot of us, who here wants to work for a big company and do marketing? So nearly everyone, right? The best thing you can do out of college, work at a company, they'll take advantage of you, they'll overwork you, they'll make you pay your dues, and then once you pay those dues, never pay them again. Because talking to you all tonight, you're a great bunch of people. There's an entrepreneurial bug in the room. People at production companies, people running social media channels, people here, you're hungry, right? You're part of an association. Is this a paid membership association, right? So I better deliver, right? I mean, you paid for this. And so I want to have some case studies in real life to show you how you can tell your company story. Is that cool with y'all? I added these slides just for this campus because I know you are very business-oriented and entrepreneurial. How's it going over here? I feel like I should talk to you. You're all like on an island. A lot of respect for both of you. In the way back, that guy wants pizza. Totally, you can beeline it. So this is my father-in-law. No one here is married. Are anyone here married? Oh, the front people. Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay, a couple married folks. You know about your in-laws. There's a thin line between love and hate. So my father-in-law has no idea. He doesn't understand. Machinima, the YouTube network, sold for $100 million to Warner Brothers. And he wondered how this company, as YouTube videos, has such a high valuation. So I asked him about sales. He's a boiler repair company in Raleigh, North Carolina. He talks about in sales, you want to grow a platform, and you want to build connections in a way where you give something to people that can't get anywhere else in quite the same way. So he talks about when he sells his boiler business, someone calls from Atlanta, they need help, that he says just enough so they can be dangerous. He gives them just enough advice that they can do it on their own, but they need to call him back to really do it the right way. And you got to solve pain points. You have to solve problems. Every time you post on Instagram for your business, what is the problem you're solving for people? Right? Because Instagram is our aspirational self. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone here that's going to post tomorrow is the great food you eat, your trip to Italy, which was epic, the date you're going on. Because everyone think about FOMO, fear of missing out, right? Like Instagram is everything I want to be in life that I'm probably 10% of, right? Like I don't show you like my 2-year-old screaming at me at 3 a.m. Could be great content, right? But that's not what my brand is. And you think about something where you're approachable. You know, my father-in-law talks about you develop a skill that most people don't have, you share it with them in a way that's unique to you. Because in the digital age where we are now, your personality matters more than ever. People talk about what makes you stand out. It's who you are. I always recommend if people want to figure out their voice, you think about 3 distinguishing characteristics that you have that make you you through your experiences in life. And how does that define your identity? How can you roll that into a story, which we'll get to in a minute, to make a compelling narrative online, through marketing, through in real life, with your business, to help people understand you that they can share it to someone else very easily. So this is a product story, right? So many of us will work in businesses where the product is a story. Like, does anyone know that Twitter actually launched as a podcasting app? And then it pivoted because Apple had a podcasting app. So they had a company called Odeo. It didn't do well, and they took all their venture capital money, and they decided they were going to make it Twitter. But Twitter wasn't Twitter at first. It was TWTTR. It was a text messaging platform, an SMS. And they realized no one wanted that. They already had text. So they made Twitter. Twitter had 2 adoption patterns. I study how adoption patterns happen for products. And the first one was techies in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley community. They are the first users of Twitter. They are the community members. They suggested features in the app. So Twitter itself didn't have @replies or hashtags. The founders of Twitter thought that hashtags and @replies were dumb. And they did not like the community suggesting these features. They disagreed that they'd be mainstream. Now you can sell hashtags on Twitter and Instagram. They're ubiquitous. Facebook didn't have tagging when you first launched. And now you can tag your friends, right? So this habit was formed by the customer base, and then which informed the product, which then made that community feel part of that story. And there's a company called Basecamp. Anyone use this? It's in advertising, and you share files, and you can use a database and a software to communicate. And there's 2 founders there. They write books. A great way for companies and businesses and anyone you want to tell your story. Teach what you learn, and you learn what you teach. The more you become a master at a subject that you can teach other people, the more likely you're going to understand that better than anyone else. And so they wrote this book, which, this is a great cover, right? It's called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work. They pitched me to come on my podcast. They sent me this copy. It's all about how to run a modern day office. They give Fridays in the summer their employees a day off. They have everyone work remote as well, so a better work-life balance. And finally, they have a private Slack channel for people to share photos from their 3-day weekends to each other, right? Who wouldn't want that work environment? They give you money to take that Friday off and do something fun. So at the end of the day, they value work-life balance, and there's not a lot of growth. So many people want growth. They want huge companies like Uber. How many times have you heard someone say, oh, I run the Uber for this, right? I have the Uber for cats, whatever that even means. I had someone, LA has Silicon Beach. It's like one of these monikers for tech. And I had some guy pitch me an Instagram for cats. He thought cats needed a social network. I mean, there's limitless ideas, but you can't just contextualize yourself on being something for something, Uber for something else, right? So ultimately, teach what you learn what you teach. And anyone here heard of Hannah Hart? Great YouTuber, My Drunk Kitchen. As you can imagine, she gets drunk in her kitchen and makes food. She listened to her YouTube community. She has millions of subscribers. And her YouTube community wanted to have a tour. They wanted her to go around the country. So she ended up doing a crowdfunding campaign, the Hello Hardo Tour, where she cooked food in a Winnebago And she was able to go to people's houses randomly. If let's say Des Moines, Iowa, where I'm from, had enough backers on the crowdfunding campaign, then she would go to Des Moines and pick people at random to make content with. They're collaborating, right? She's making video, she's elevating. Anyone here know the term collab? Big in YouTube, right? The best collabs when you're starting out are collabing with people that are bigger than you, right? Obviously. They're more broad, they're more mainstream. Why would they collaborate with someone who's smaller, right? Who has a lower brand or a lower business or lower success rate? Because you could have a very niche audience. You could have a very specific, like if I have a shoe company and I talk about tennis shoes, and let's say, who here, what's your name? Don. Let's say Don has, I mean, Don's big on YouTube, right? Sure. Yeah, right? And so let's say Don has a global channel, like he's a sneakerhead, and he gets the Yeezys, right? So I have a very niche one. I do like tennis, running shoes. He has a very broad one. He's a celebrity icon. So he collabs with me because he can reach my community, and he wants to pay it back, right? He wants to help me because I'm just, a rookie here. But Don is a much bigger legend, right? Yeah, you're used to hearing this. And so I want to get that wide mainstream exposure, and then we have to tag each other, right? Like AMA did not tag me in that story, and I wanted to repost it because I want to collaborate, right? That's how we elevate each other. Another thing is you bring people into the process, bring people into the arena. So when you have, this is my book cover, I crowdsourced it. Anyone here 99 Designs for making a product? Like you get to pay someone $300 to make your product, any sort of design for art, and then you crowdsource feedback. And so I had people from all over the world create 20 covers, and then I could pick the best one that I paid for. I actually hired some professionals for these covers. But as you can tell, like that's a weird image. That does not represent my book. This looks like, I don't know, like some futuristic, like mind control inception. This looks too much like YouTube. That's too much like Twitter. This looks like an acid trip in the 60s. That looks like Sherlock Holmes. And so but then allowing people to get in the process was so fascinating because I also crowd edited my book. So I had friends and people, I have an email list, which if anyone joins my email list in the next 48 hours, I'll give you all these slides and I'll give you a free chapter of my book if you go to influencereconomy.com and sign up for the list. But overall, I got feedback and I put my book into a Google document. I had all these people read it, complete strangers. And I thought it would make the book better, and it did. It made it more structured. It made it have more like teeth in it, more research, right? How to grow influence, what are the steps to get there? Make it sequential. Everyone's lazy right now. It's so hard to focus. Who here reads books? How hard is it to just not watch TV or be on your phone? Like I have an iPad, and then I have my phone texting when I'm reading an ebook, right? Audible is the only thing I can do in the car, right? Because at least I have to drive, and I have nothing to focus on except for that. But at the end of the day, the people who crowd edited my book, my wife's like, this is a stupid idea. You need to make money from this book. We have a newborn at home. I found that the crowd editors were the first people to pre-order my book and the first people to leave reviews. So if you go to my page, I have 130 some reviews. The very first people were the ones that crowd edited it because they had emotional ownership. They felt a part of the story. And every time I work with a client that wants to reach a community, I help launch Snoop Dogg's podcast. I do a lot of podcast marketing. I want to involve the community. I want to ask questions. I want to provoke. I want to get ideas. I may not listen to the ideas. And my deal was with the book. If you leave a comment in the margins of the Google document, I'll give you a crowd editor title. So the 100 people edited the book. They're in the book, in the acknowledgments. I've been introduced to people. I edited Ryan's book, right? So you want to make it a two-way street so people feel a part of your story, and then they contribute, again, that layer of collaboration. So this is an article I wrote called Why Helping People Expecting Nothing in Return is the Best Business Model for Life. I just threw this out there. I recommend anyone who here has not written a blog post. If you haven't, I don't want to shame you, so don't answer that question. Who here has written a blog post? It's easy. There's a website called medium.com. You can sign up for a blog tomorrow, really well designed. Wrote this on Medium, right? Talked about giving and bringing your community and like a bunch of case studies. My friend sent this article to someone named Adam Grant. He wrote a really good book called Give and Take. Wharton professor, best-selling author, brilliant TED Talk speaker. He talks about giving, taking, and matching, and how most of us are matchers in life. Like I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's about survival. The takers, you'll know who they are. I see you in the room. There's some takers in here. But the takers are the people you want to weed out. right? You don't want takers in your life. But givers, surprisingly, givers, they succeed the most if their self-interests are aligned, working for the common goal, right? Givers fail the most because they get taken advantage of. How many times have you felt like you spent a whole day helping other people and you're burned out, right? You know, you're tired of helping other people. Nothing personal against the other folks, but you can't focus on yourself. So self-maintenance is big, especially in social media age, like getting anxiety. There's a Netflix special, there's a movie about YouTubers and celebrity and how a lot of like these YouTubers they profiled are depressed because they got so famous and they got all that sugar, right? The saccharin, like the mental stimulus, and then they lost it and they went down because they didn't get that interaction anymore. They lost money, right? Social media really does create everyone's trying to be famous in a way. And ultimately, that's not healthy. And so Adam's book touched on a lot of these points around giving. I got him on my podcast, episode number 6. He wrote a book blurb. I've gotten clients out of writing blog posts. You don't need to be an expert. I had no research here. Just write a point of view. Write your POV. Write what you aspire to do. Share it on Facebook. Send it to your network. You don't know what's going to happen. At the end of the day, a lot of people don't put themselves out there. You have to be discoverable. We talk about influencers making a dent in the world. Only way you can make a dent is if there's a record of your dent, because someone needs to find it. So if you're discoverable in Google, that's everyone's homepage at this stage, right? Everyone's going to Google at least once, twice, 3 times a day. So the first biggest search engine is Google. The second largest search engine is YouTube. And surprisingly, the third largest is Amazon. So I worked really hard to get into all those search engines. At the end of the day, that matters. If you Google my name and those pop up, that's a job well done for anyone that's trying to promote themselves. Anyone here know Fenty Beauty? You know, Rihanna's company? You know, I rip on celebrities all the time because they're like, the people I really have, everyone needs a good enemy. And my enemy is like the traditional marketer that just sort of sells you on a bill of goods. And ultimately, you know, I talk about celebrities not moving the needle, but she did a great job. You know, Rihanna's brand, you always need to think about undervalued communities, right? African-American women are one of the highest people that spend money on beauty products. And traditionally, a lot of these beauty products were made for people that were not African-American, right? And do you know anyone that's learned how to put makeup on through YouTube, right? Because people, especially if you're not white, you know, and I'm white, by the way, so just so you know, like things are geared towards, you know, white people and often the industry around beauty. And so people like Rihanna create aspirational products and they find underserved markets. So think about your identity, everyone in here right now, and think about what makes you unique. Think about your network, your community, your people. Could you create something for them of value that matters to you in your community around your identity? And Rihanna's done a great job doing that. Also talk about Dosist. Anyone here know about this cannabis industry that's becoming more legal in California, right? Cannabis is not marijuana, right? Marijuana is criminality, right? So that's not a brand you want to associate with. So Dosist, a lot of these companies in cannabis, they focus on moods. The majority of the decisions we make, studies show, are based on emotion. We don't always vote for our values. We vote for the emotion of the leader and how they make us feel, or how they make us feel safer. So Dosist has arouse. You can imagine what that's for. Relief, calm, sleep, bliss, right? Even cannabis is a complete rebrand of a word that's been stigmatized and actually unfairly prosecuted. And then Uber, right? Uber, they launched as a premium company. You know, and I like this. Are these launches resonating? Are these marketing stories? Because at the end of the day, like I want to help you with your personal development as professionals, but also as marketers. And so Uber comes through, right? They launched the premium product first. I went to a conference in France called Les Web. Creative, right? Les Web. And Les Web has all these Silicon Valley type people from all over the world. They come, because every tech community now is bubbled up in New York to Buenos Aires. Does Long Beach have a tech community? It's, okay. That didn't go over well. So Uber launches a premium brand. They gave all these influencers, right? These tech investors, Silicon Valley press and journalists, they gave them all access to Uber in Paris. This is about 6 years ago. And they gave everyone free rides. And it was a premium brand. It was black cars. It wasn't UberX. They didn't launch that at first. So everyone then shared the Uber experience, and they gave out promo codes, right? I'm sure they had a lot of college, you know, ambassador programs a couple years ago here. But when you think about it, If I can brag on social media, I'm riding a black car in Paris, that's the aspirational life I want to live, right? That's what social media is made for, is bragging, humble bragging, right? Oh, I'm stuck in an Uber in Paris, and meanwhile, it's free, right? So they were able to tap into the influencers that then spread the word as a premium product. Then, a couple years later, they launched UberX. And now, that's about all I ride, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a lot more inexpensive. It's a normal car, but they went premium first. So you can go top down, you can go bottom up, but ultimately, like Tesla, for example, great example, right? They launched with a sexy car. Now they're creating SUVs, and they're creating more inexpensive models. So ultimately, the premium approach really helps you get brand market share, and then you can charge down. A lot of the worst products, I listen to Silicon Valley podcasts all the time about pricing. The worst thing you can do is price yourself low. You can price yourself low with your product, your business, your consulting, if you anchor it. You say, oh, normally this is worth $1,500, but I'm giving it out as a $500 opportunity for you, right? I'm creating a pilot program. The best way, if you want to develop yourself and get consulting gigs is think about how you pilot a product with someone or a marketing job or a launch. And say, you know what, normally I would charge you this, but since I'm seasoned and growing my experience here, I would like to charge this and make it a win-win. And then get, like Snoop Dogg, for example. It's not like I charge them my Disney rate, because at the end of the day, who here read on my bio that I worked with Snoop Dogg? Right? And who here came for that reason, right? I mean, I hate to say it, but the infatuation with celebrity, it's really interesting, not to get sidetracked, but I do get sidetracked. My book's coming out in Italy, in Japan, and Vietnam. I self-published, right? So I sold those rights myself. And ultimately, what I found is that foreign cultures talk about fame. In America, we talk about celebrity. Celebrity is associated more with money. Fame is a lot different. So I had this Japanese company that said they want to make me famous to sell my book, and then book me on speaking gigs there. And I took it very differently than if you're an influencer that gets pitched for brand deals, it's all about the money. And so we have to think about influence in a way where fame is so much different than celebrity, and a lot of us aspire to be that kind of a celebrity and be well known, but at the end of the day, you want to master what you do. You want to have fame in that industry. You want to be the best marketer on social media, on Instagram. Think about how you can master something very specifically that's super niche, like Instagram stories. I'm sure a lot of companies would pay for people right now that were in their 20s to run Instagram stories for them, right? How can you pilot something with a bigger company? And then Pinterest, right? Who here uses Pinterest? Like majority of the women in the room, all the guys are hiding their Pinterest accounts. I can see that in their eyes. So the guy from Pinterest, Ben, who started it, he's also from Des Moines, Iowa. He found the money ballers, again. He found undervalued, influential people. He didn't launch like Uber through that Silicon Valley tech. Again, I study the adoption patterns of products because we can all learn about it, right? Think about your adoption pattern as like your high school friends. If you have high school friends, those people help define you throughout your whole life, right? Your college friends, your wife, your kids. So you think about those are major moments where you get formed. And so when this product got formed, they went to Des Moines, Iowa, Houston, Texas. They left the bubble of California, and they found women that had pin boards in their house, right? Anyone here still have a pin board, the old-fashioned one in your dorm room, where you stick a pin and you put your photos up, and so ultimately, a couple of people have those, but back in the day, everyone had them, right? So they said, okay, we have a digital version of that. They got feedback. They built the product for these undervalued, mostly women, and they had Tupperware parties, right? Tupperware parties are a big thing where you would sell Tupperware back in the day, and they had parties to get feedback on the product. So don't be afraid to get feedback. It's so hard, right? I'm a Cancer, right? I hate feedback. I jump into my shell. Anyone here a Cancer? We're crabs, right? So we're protective. But if you can get feedback in a way where someone's authentic with it and they actually have your best interest at heart, then you can make everything you do so much better in business. How's everyone doing? Good. All right, good. So this is all the action and lesson part. So if you're on your phone and you're taking notes, I will not take offense. This guy, by the way, what's your name? Assad. Like, by far, like, we are on the level together. Like, he's got a stylus over here. So I appreciate you taking notes. Because at the end of the day, like, I want to help you guys tell your stories. So I have 3 stories that I've researched through watching far too many TED Talks. Through my 100+ interviews on my podcast, I've interviewed some of the most brilliant storytellers in the world. I try to have a very calculated BS detector. So the 3 main stories that I've consistently seen are the underdog story, which is like Rudy, right? The underdog that makes the squad. It's how you overcame an obstacle. And these are great in job interviews. You always get that one question about like, what's your weakness? And then if you turn your weakness into a strength, that's always that Jedi mind trick, right? Where you say something like, oh yeah, I'm really too organized and I burn myself out. Or something like that, that's bullshit. You want to actually show that you did something hard. You overcame an obstacle and you worked with other people. The second one is your TED Talk story. Anyone know Brené Brown? She has great books, yeah. She talks about shame and she creates a space for conversation around feelings. That's one of my goals. To talk about, empathy, authenticity. A lot of these words that are thrown around in business and marketing that don't have anchors to them. That's like a TED Talk. I want to help teach you something. So a funny story, I go to these networking events and conferences, and there's always these like side dinners or side breakfasts or lunches. Sometimes people charge you. So I paid $100 to go to this dinner with influencers in San Diego at this marketing conference. I sit next to this guy. And so I'm like, what are you up to? What do you do? And he says, no joke, I make 6 figures. That's what he does, right? It's like, okay, I have to ask you how you make 6 figures. I don't want to, but I'm stuck with you for the next hour. So I like, okay, dude, how do you make 6 figures? I help 6-figure entrepreneurs make 7 figures. And it was like roach repellent. Like I just was like, this guy, I never want to talk to him ever again. That is not authority, right? Telling someone what you do, the revenues, the profits, you tell people that, you're turning them away, right? Ask for money, you get advice. Ask for advice, you get money. Because ultimately, I want to teach you something. I want you to leave tonight and think of one thing that you learned that you can tell your roommate, your parents, your boss, right? If I have not done that, I have failed. Have I done that? Okay. Don't feel pressured. I can hear apprehension. And the final one is your fixer story. Anyone here seen Pulp Fiction? Right? Or, or Scandal? Like they're a bunch of fixers. And so fixing is solving problems. It's saying, I help people tell stories like a badass. I help people grow their social media influence. I help people figure out their brand story, right? I'm not telling you how much money I make. I'm not telling you 6 figures to 7 figures guy stories. I'm telling you stories that matter because who here has an internship right now? Okay, you in the Packers jersey. Say what you do and say in the context of what you help people do.
Databases.
You help people. What do you help people do?
Keep organized all the data within the company.
I help people organize data in the company. That's easy enough, right? If I want to know more, I'm going to ask you, right? I'm not going to ask you, no offense, but we have other people. Anyone else has an internship right now? You in the back in the black, what do you help people do? You help tell brand stories do what? On digital platforms, right? Easy enough, right? You're not saying like who your clients are yet. You can say your clients. If you notice, I didn't mention Snoop Dogg at the beginning, right? No one likes that 6 figures, 7 figures guy. You can't just go out. You want to lead with that authenticity and connect emotionally. And there's nothing worse than someone name dropping a client, right? You can do that in the right environment, but just going in there to promote that you are associated. Like anyone here, what social proof is? Social proof is essentially like when you walk in a room. Okay, what's your definition of social proof? You in the sweater. Yeah. Social currency, like validation. Like I worked with Snoop Dogg, I worked with Microsoft or Disney, right? It's what LinkedIn's all about, like, making sure someone gives you a reference. So ultimately, when you think about social proof and how you fix people, you help solve their problems. That's a great way to articulate that you are going to solve someone's pain point and they're going to hire you or work with you or make you their marketer. So this is a slide that has way too much text. So at the end of the day, these are the definitions of the stories. It's funny, I used to call this emotion, authority, and like problem solver, but it's not memorable, right? That's not good branding. It's often some of the best branding. Like there's a great book called The Tipping Point with Malcolm Gladwell, and he brands the tipping point as a term, right? When things become popular. He has like the 10,000 hour rule, where you work for something for 10,000 hours, you can master that subject. So great ways to think about your work you do is how do you create bigger brands and sub-brands. When we worked at Disney, we launched all their social media. Our company was acquired, and we did social media analytics for Pixar, for the parks. We did the first promoted tweet, and I helped market the game Up. Or not the game, the movie Up. Ever seen that Pixar movie? So we did a bunch of work with this guy named Pogo. Anyone seen his work? He does video remixes on YouTube. So he would take Disney footage from Cinderella, all these great movies, he'd remix it, and then Disney wanted to shut him down. And he got DJ mix music, it was amazing, and it was beautiful, and he had millions and tens of millions of views, and Disney said, shut it down. And so we said, you know what, we'll do the opposite. We're gonna hire this guy. He has 100,000 YouTube subscribers. We're gonna give him the Up footage. We're gonna pay him some money. We're gonna make him feel part of the story. And ultimately, when you think about branding yourself, it's like getting people into your story, creating that language, and helping promote your brand is invaluable. And so the underdog story is like Rocky, right? Actually, great story on the script was Sylvester Stallone wouldn't make this movie unless he starred in it. And so he said, I'm in, I gave you the script. He turned out a bunch of offers, and we wouldn't be talking about him right now if he didn't star in the movie, right? Philadelphia is the ultimate underdog city. Not anymore because they've won Super Bowls and NCAA titles, but back in the day, very much underdog city. The badass story. So many of the TED Talks you watch, like there's a really good one by Susan Cain. It's called The Power of Introverts. She talks about how she was an introvert, right? The emotional story, the underdog story. She went to summer camp. She read books. They told her that she was not social, but she still reads books. She's an introvert. And then what does she do? She pivots. I'm going to tell you about the power of introverts, right? So ultimately, most TED Talks come through that emotion, then the authority badass, where I'm sharing something that you can learn from, that you can spread to other people. And the fixer story, right? Ultimately, you're solving problems. We've gone through this. You're helping others, and you want to show value. What you're doing for others, that then I can say, oh my God, you got to meet my friend. Anyone here heard of the research around weak ties, strong ties, and no ties? So essentially, we get the majority of the jobs, opportunities, and networking positions because of weak ties. These are people that we don't know well. Someone I meet tonight that I may not see again for 3 months that says, oh my gosh, you've got to apply for this internship, right? Right? It's often, who here has gotten a job because they knew someone casually? You go to a party, you pitch yourself, suddenly they're like, you got to meet my friend, oh my, and they think about that with your strong ties. Who here has family members or best friends from high school that you can't network with them, right? They're lawyers maybe, or they're someone that's in finance and they're not in marketing, and someone you sat next to at a desk for 2 years. So ultimately, you have to think about like those, and then no ties is finally people that you have no connection to. So your weak ties, right? People that you can help. So I can help you do this, and I want you to tell my friend, or you tell your friend, because do you ever have that epiphany moment where you're like, oh my gosh, you got to meet my friend, you'll love them, right? In college, that's like, hey, you got to meet my friend because you like to drink beer and they like to drink beer, right? It's much more basic. But professionally, the older you get, you'll realize you get most jobs because someone's like, a lightning bolt comes off. They're like, oh, you do that? You should totally meet my friend. And the best thing is having no expectations, right? Ask for advice, get money. Ask for money, get advice. Like, I like to be redundant on that phrase because it's so true. I get advice all the time because I love getting feedback. But moreover, that's where people really invest in you. And they get that emotional ownership I talked about because they know that if they're invested, you give updates, right? A lot of us lose our connections. It's so important to find a way. I know people that they overdo this networking. I interviewed this guy. He invests companies, these big Silicon Valley investors. He has a database of 10,000 contacts. So he'll see you. What's your name again? Adam. So you see Adam meet him at a dinner. And what's your last name? So he's like Adam over here, Adam V. And he'll be like, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. He'll come back and be like, oh, so how's your wife doing? Whatever happened to your dog? I heard it had a herniated disc. Like, he methodically takes notes, right? That's aggressive, right? But think about how you can organize more like that. Like, how do you reach out to people? Like, sending people articles is a great way to do it. Hey, I thought about you. I felt like, you would like this article. Volunteering at events, right? It's all about, at the end of the day, like growing your platform, and that's through your connections. So again, this isn't pitching. This isn't an elevator. This isn't a confined space. Have that 20-minute conversational pitch, right? Where you're not selling, you're listening. You're having a conversation. And these are 4 steps to tell your authentic story. This is actually the interactive part where you're going to talk about mind mapping, writing headlines, free writing. Because I want to get you to a point where you can leave this tonight and think about how to map out your business stories. Whether that's finding a better job, like I mentioned, networking with people or marketing someone's business. So this is a little bit skewed to the bottom, but there's something called a mind map that really works well when organizing your ideas. And so it's when you put your own focus in the center. Like this is a story. I was preparing for my talk at Google, and I wanted to figure out how to talk about depression and stand-up comedy. And so I have here a lot. You can't see it as well, but again, if you sign up for my email list, I'll send you the slides. You have me down there. Like this is my underdog story. Talk about all these different things that I've done and accomplished. And I have another version up here where if you look at this, you can use a computer program, or this is a little grittier. It's a lot more grittier. But this is real, right? This is my underdog. This is my personal story. So what's a moment emotionally, like a tearjerker, where I can connect emotionally? So I went through my life, and I thought, what were these obstacles I've overcome? And I was a film career lackey, right? Anyone here worked in film? Like the most thankless dues-paying work ever. I was depressed in my early 20s, right? I overcame that. I was laid off at Disney. And this is funny because I went through these feelings, right? It's all about emotion. It's like presenting the emotional connection. I cried in my car, in the parking lot. I was ashamed to call my wife. But I found a better job and got stock in that company 2 weeks later, right? So it turned out well. Much better career 5 years later. I drank tequila with a coworker, and it really felt good. And so that was more of a coping mechanism. But ultimately, thinking about your mind map, right? I got promoted. This is a great story. I got promoted and demoted in a week by this terrible boss. So he's like, look, we love your work. You've been recommended. You're going to be promoted. You're going to be reporting the EVP of programming. And so this guy sings a song and dance. He's so happy to have me. And then a week later, he's like, you, me, conference room right now. And I was just like, whoa, the guy like crazy anger management issues. And then he demoted me a week later, right? So that's an emotional story, right? But I found a better job a month later, and I got a raise, and I got a much better deal. I worked for a company out of London. It was called Stake.com. It was an opinion network, and it was a semantic way. It's like a structured Twitter, semantically to connect people to agree or disagree on topics, right? And that was a much better opportunity. So a lot of times we think about like that emotional connection. We all can tell our own stories and think about them as a bigger metaphor. Like we were talking before here with some people about when you watch people that run for campaigns for governor, for president, even right now, people often tell their personal narrative, and then that is a metaphor for how they can help you. So anytime you want to tell a bigger story about a company, think about a metaphor where the company isn't the focus. The customer is always the focus, right? If I'm running for president, it's about the voter. But my personal narrative can be secondary. I'm pitching my next book right now to publishers. And I mentioned that on a call, that the best podcast guests are the people that make themselves secondary, but their career is a metaphor for the larger message that they're sending about the work they do. So this is the continuation here of more of these mind maps. And so then after your mind map, you want to pick those little circles, and you want to have headlines, right? So you want to, we're inundated with information right now. So we want to keep this for the ADHD crowd as much as possible. I don't want you writing yet. You want to make headlines. And remember those feelings I talked about? Getting drunk on tequila at the bar, being ashamed to call my wife, but getting a better job 2 weeks later, right? So think about that expertise you have in the field. Like if you think about that authority story, the second story about being a badass, like how can you share your authority, something you mastered? I mean, the best storytellers are teachers. Overwhelmingly, if I have a business teacher on my podcast, like that guy Adam Grant I mentioned from Wharton, he's a brilliant storyteller because he teaches. He gets practice every day. He gets to talk to students, right? So ultimately, think about what you're an expert in. Go very specific in a niche. Make it relatable, though, right? This isn't like, some sort of swipe left, swipe right dating app. Like you want to be very targeted and understand your audience. And then think about these headlines, like I talk about the laid off by Disney, cried in my car, overcame clinical depression. I use myself as the example because at the end of the day, you can do this for your company as well. Use for your marketing team. You can mind map, make headlines. It's really easy. Get feedback. Present your ideas to other people. Collaborate. Again, that emotional investment. People want you to succeed if you build up trust. And then finally, we're all talking about comedy. Like when I was in the back earlier, and people were asking me about stand-up. And little known fact, when you do comedy, like you bomb for 5 years. I mean, anyone know, like you watch documentaries about comedians, they fail and they fail and they fail, right? They want to master their craft. So when you perform comedy, you want to make sure you follow your set list. Anytime you present your business, you have social media marketing, or you're sharing your story anywhere, you want to have a consistent message. You want to practice, you want to hone, you want to work on your story. You don't want to deviate from it. It's like Jay-Z at Austin City Limits and at South by Southwest, right? He played the greatest hits. So comedians, when they're on stage, the majority of them have what appears to be a cocktail. It's normally like mineral water with a lemon in it. And they'll have a comedy set list on their napkin. And so anytime they get distracted, someone heckles them, they make a joke, everyone's laughing, they'll casually go back, take a sip, and make sure they're following their set. The first time I did stand-up comedy, I got heckled so hard. I left the stage without finishing my set. And so I always recommend when you get through your campaign, you can deviate if you want, you can pivot, reimagine it, but your story is the same way. Get through it, don't let the crowd heckle you like I did, and just put yourself out there. Because once you get your story down, like if you can imagine, I've done this talk close to triple digits. Through webinars, I practice all the time for online audiences. I've spoken at Google, I'm speaking now. At the end of the day, once you get the story down, it's yours, and own it, and make sure no one can define your narrative. Nothing worse than being in the position where someone's defining you, right? Define your own narrative, own your story, and make sure that you rehearse and be authentically rehearsed when reaching people.